She was owned by the Alpha Court, sold like property to pay her dead father's debts. Every Alpha in the territory came to bid on the last Omega of a fallen pack. They circled her like hungry wolves, ready to claim their prize. Then he walked in, the most feared Alpha alive, the one who kills without mercy. His single bid silenced the room, but when he took her home, he made a shocking vow. I won't touch you until you choose me. She expected a monster. Instead, she found a protector. Because every rival pack wants her dead, and there's a prophecy about her bloodline that could destroy them all. Now she's trapped between the Alpha who bought her and the deadly secret he's hiding. Can she trust the most dangerous wolf alive? Or will his dark truth shatter everything? The auction hall fell silent as Cale Blackthorn's massive frame filled the doorway. His obsidian leather jacket and perfectly tailored black suit spoke of wealth and power, but it was his presence that truly commanded attention. Wolves instinctively shifted, creating a path as he moved forward, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room with calculated precision. Marcus Redclaw's triumphant grin faltered. Even he knew better than to challenge the most feared Alpha in the territories directly. Cale Blackthorn wasn't just another pack leader. He was a legend who had claimed his first territory at 17, avenging his murdered parents in a battle that became werewolf folklore. Arya stood perfectly still on the auction platform, her chin raised in defiance. The silver chains glinted against her olive skin, a stark contrast to the simple white dress that highlighted her Omega status. But there was nothing submissive about her posture. Her emerald eyes burned with a mixture of anger and something deeper. A survival instinct that had kept her alive after the Silvermane Pack's destruction. I'll raise the bid to 1 million gold credits. Cale's voice cut through the tension like a blade. His words were calm, almost casual, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. 1 million gold credits was more than most Alphas would spend on an entire pack, let alone a single Omega. Victor Stormwind, who had been quietly calculating his own strategy, leaned back with a calculating smile. Something was happening that went beyond a simple auction. Marcus Redclaw's face turned an ugly shade of red. This is outrageous, he sputtered. The auction rules clearly state— The auction rules, Cale interrupted, taking another step forward, are whatever I say they are. No one missed the implied threat. Marcus might be a brutal Alpha, but Cale Blackthorn was something else entirely. He didn't just lead through fear. He dominated through an almost supernatural ability to control any situation. Arya felt something strange happening. The silver chains that should have been burning her skin seemed to lose their intensity. Her moonblood, key lineage, a rare genetic trait passed down through her destroyed pack, was reacting to Cale's presence in a way she didn't understand. The auctioneer, sensing the explosive tension, cleared his throat. Alpha Blackthorn's bid of 1 million gold credits stands. Do any other parties wish to challenge? Silence. Victor Stormwind's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just about buying an Omega. Something else was happening. Something that went beyond the immediate transaction. Cale approached the auction platform, each step measured and deliberate. When he looked at Arya, something unexpected happened. Instead of the predatory gaze she expected from an Alpha, there was a flicker of something else. Recognition? Curiosity? Respect? The chains binding Arya's wrists began to tremble. The auction hall held its breath as Cale approached the platform. Marcus Redclaw's face twisted with rage, his massive hands clenching into fists. The other Alphas watched, a mix of shock and fear rippling through the crowd. Arya stood perfectly still, her muscles tense beneath the white dress. Years of survival had taught her that movement could be a sign of weakness, and she refused to show any vulnerability. The silver chains glinted against her skin, a constant reminder of her precarious position. Cale's approach was deliberate, each step calculated. When he reached the platform, he was close enough for Arya to see the intricate details of his pack's collar. A delicate piece of metalwork that looked more like a piece of art than a symbol of ownership. "Arya Silvermane," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I'm not your enemy." She said nothing, her green eyes challenging him to prove his words. With surprising gentleness, Cale reached forward. His fingers brushed against her neck as he carefully placed the Shadowcrest pack collar around her. It was lighter than she expected, warm from his touch, and fitted perfectly. Not like a restraint, but like something designed for protection. Then, louder so the entire hall could hear, Cale announced, "She remains untouched until she chooses otherwise." The words hung in the air, unexpected and revolutionary. In a world where omegas were typically treated as property, this was a radical declaration. Marcus exploded. "This is ridiculous. I had the highest bid before." "The bid is mine," Cale interrupted, his voice a low growl that made several wolves take an involuntary step back. "The transaction is complete." Victor Stormwind watched from the sidelines, his calculating eyes missing nothing. Something more was happening here. Something beyond a simple auction purchase. Moments later, Arya found herself in Cale's sleek black SUV. The interior was pristine. Black leather, polished wood trim, and an atmosphere of controlled power that matched its owner. She sat ramrod straight, her hands folded in her lap, watching Cale from the corner of her eye. He drove with one hand on the wheel, his profile sharp, eye against the passing landscape. No handcuffs, no additional restraints. Just the delicate pack collar that felt more like a whisper against her skin than a chain. Why? The question escaped before she could stop herself. Cale's eyes flickered to her, then back to the road. "You're more valuable alive and willing than broken and resentful." It wasn't the answer she expected. Most alphas would have boasted, threatened, or explained their grand designs. This simple, pragmatic response caught her off guard. The car ate up miles of forest road, pine trees blurring into a green wall. Arya recognized they were heading deep into Shadowcrest territory, remote, protected, and completely under Cale's control. Her moonblood lineage prickled. Something about this alpha was different. Not just his actions, but something deeper. A sense of something she couldn't quite define. Cale seemed content with silence, allowing her space to process. No interrogation, no demands. Just movement toward an unknown destination. As the forest grew denser, Arya realized she had a choice to make. She could fight. She could resist. Or she could try to understand what was happening. Her father's last words echoed in her memory. "Your destiny is larger than this moment." She looked at Cale, searching his silver eyes for any hint of deception. The SUV's headlights cut through the dense forest, revealing a massive compound that seemed to rise from the wilderness like a fortress. Stone and timber blended seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, creating a structure that was both imposing and organic. Massive windows glowed with warm light, breaking through the darkness of the midnight hour. As Cale pulled up to the main entrance, Arya noticed the careful layout of the compound. Guard stations were strategically positioned, not obviously, but integrated into the landscape. Wolves moved with disciplined efficiency, their movements precise even in the late hour. The front doors opened before Cale could fully stop the vehicle. Two figures emerged, a tall, broad-shouldered man with an air of calm precision, and a woman whose athletic build screamed danger. Ronan, Cale's beta, stepped forward first. His greeting was measured, professional. "Alpha?" He acknowledged Cale with a slight nod, then turned his attention to Arya. His eyes swept over her, assessing. Not with predatory interest, but with the calculated evaluation of a strategist trying to understand a potential threat. "Welcome to Shadowcrest," Ronan said, his tone deliberately neutral. Every word seemed carefully chosen, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Luna moved closer, her stance radiating barely contained tension. Where Ronan was calculation, she was pure, raw energy. Her eyes locked onto Arya with an intensity that made it clear. Any misstep would be met with immediate consequences. "Another stray," Luna muttered, loud enough for Arya to hear. Her words dripped with skepticism, a challenge masked as a casual observation. Kale ignored the comment, instead guiding Arya with a light touch at the small of her back. Not pushing, not controlling, just directing. The difference was subtle but significant. Inside, the compound was a blend of modern design and traditional pack aesthetics. Wolf symbolism was everywhere, carved into wooden panels, subtly integrated into architectural details. Pelts and artwork depicting pack history adorned the walls, telling stories of battles and leadership. Ronan remained close, his presence a constant reminder of the careful monitoring Arya was under. Luna prowled slightly behind, her movements predatory, watching every subtle shift of Arya's body. Kale's quarters were on the top floor, a massive suite that commanded a view of the entire compound and the surrounding forest. He led Arya to a separate wing, stopping in front of an elaborately carved door. "Your quarters," he said simply. The room was nothing like Arya expected. Instead of a sparse, prison-like space, she found an elegantly appointed suite. Soft, neutral tones, a massive four-poster bed with crisp white linens, a sitting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit forest. A private bathroom suggested complete autonomy, with modern fixtures and plush towels. "These are the rules," Kale said, his voice calm. "You have freedom within the compound. You'll eat at the pack table. No one may touch you without consequences. Your safety is guaranteed." Arya's defiance bubbled to the surface. "And what are your true intentions?" The question was a challenge, a knife disguised as words. Kale paused, something almost resembling a smile touching the corner of his mouth. "Even monsters have codes of honor," he replied. Then he was gone, leaving Arya alone with her turbulent thoughts, the weight of the Shadowcrest collar a constant reminder of her new reality. The first rays of dawn filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a soft golden light across Arya's unfamiliar bedroom. She stretched cautiously, the silk sheets a stark contrast to the rough conditions she'd experienced since her pack's destruction. The Shadowcrest collar felt heavy against her neck, a constant reminder of her captive status. Dressed in clothes provided by the pack, practical dark pants and a fitted gray sweater, Arya stepped into the compound's main corridor. The hallways buzzed with early morning activity. Young wolves moved with purpose, some in training gear, others carrying documents or discussing pack business. The compound was nothing like she'd imagined. State-of-the-art security cameras blended seamlessly into architectural elements. Touchscreen panels were integrated into stone walls. This wasn't just a wolf pack. It was a sophisticated operation that felt more like a high-tech corporate headquarters than a traditional werewolf territory. Following the sounds of activity, Arya found herself near the training grounds, a massive indoor facility stretched before her with multiple training zones. Young wolves moved through complex combat sequences, their movements precise and disciplined. Kale stood at the center of the largest training area. Unlike the brutal alpha she'd imagined, he moved with calculated grace. He wasn't just instructing, he was teaching. When a young wolf struggled with a defensive maneuver, Kale demonstrated the technique, breaking it down step by step. His voice carried patience, not aggression. "Watch your center of gravity," he corrected one young wolf. "Defense isn't about strength, it's about balance and understanding your opponent's movement." Arya found herself watching, surprised. This wasn't the monster she'd heard stories about. The wolves training under him looked up with respect, not fear. Beta Ronin approached her silently. "Breakfast is served," he said, his tone professional but not unwelcoming. The pack gathers in the main dining hall. The communal dining area was massive, with long wooden tables that could easily seat over 100 wolves. As Arya entered, conversations hushed, heads turned. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes examining her, the newcomer, the last Silvermane, the unexpected guest prisoner of their alpha. Whispers followed her movements. "Is that her? The Silvermane Omega? Why would Kale want her?" She chose a seat near the end of a table, keeping distance from the clusters of pack members. A server, a young Omega female, approached with a plate of food. Scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh fruit. The quality of the meal was unexpected. A muscular warrior a few seats down caught her eye. Unlike the others, he wasn't whispering. He stared directly at her, a suggestive smirk playing on his lips. His gaze traveled inappropriately over her body. Well, he said loudly enough for surrounding pack members to hear. "Looks like the Alpha's new plaything is looking lonely." The dining hall went silent. Before anyone could react, a blur of motion announced Kale's presence. He moved with impossible speed, grabbing the warrior by the throat and lifting him completely off the ground. The rage radiating from Kale was palpable, a dangerous, controlled fury that made even the most seasoned pack members go absolutely still. "You will never." Kale's voice was a dangerous whisper. "Speak to her. Never look at her. Never even breathe in her direction again." The warrior's face turned purple, his feet dangling helplessly. The corridors of Shadowcrest echoed with hushed voices. Arya's wolf-enhanced hearing caught fragments of a conversation between Kale and an older male, Elder Thorn, in a study down the hallway. Instinctively, she pressed closer, her back against the cold stone wall. "The Moonblood line cannot be ignored." Elder Thorn's voice was urgent, tinged with a mixture of reverence and fear. Her father's last words? "I know the prophecy," Kale interrupted, his tone sharp. "Better than anyone." Curiosity burned through Arya's veins. She'd heard whispers about her bloodline, about something special in the Silvermane legacy, but nothing concrete. Her father had spoken of a destiny, but she'd always dismissed it as the ramblings of a dying alpha trying to comfort his last surviving child. "The prophecy states clearly," Elder Thorn continued, "that a Moonblood Omega with pure lineage could either unite all packs or trigger their complete destruction. Her telekinetic abilities?" Arya's breath caught. Telekinetic abilities? She knew she had moments of strange power, times when objects seemed to move without her touching them, but she'd always believed it was her imagination. Kale's response was measured. "We protect her. No other pack can know the full extent of her potential." The conversation continued, but Arya's mind reeled. She was more than just a captive, more than just the last survivor of a fallen pack. Something about her bloodline carried a power that could change everything. That evening, she confronted Kale in his private study. Massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Shadowcrest training grounds. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with ancient tomes and modern research volumes. "What aren't you telling me?" Arya demanded, her hands trembling slightly. Before Kale could respond, Beta Ronin burst through the door. "Alpha, we have scouts. Redclaw and Stormwind pack markers have been detected on the western border." The temperature in the room dropped. Kale's silver eyes hardened, shifting between human and wolf. "Prepare defensive positions. Full protocol." Arya watched as the pack transformed around her. Warriors moved with precision, weapons being checked, communication systems activated. This was no ordinary threat. "They've come for me," she realized aloud. Kale's hand moved to her shoulder, a protective gesture that surprised them both. "Not just you. What you represent." The tension in the room was electric. Outside, the first sounds of potential conflict began to echo. Distant wolf calls, the movement of trained warriors taking their positions. The early morning mist clung to the Shadowcrest training grounds like ghostly fingers. Arya stood at the edge of the compound, watching warriors practice defensive maneuvers. A week had passed since the Border Scout incident, and tension hummed through the pack like an electrical current. Kale moved among the younger wolves, his movements fluid and precise. Even in human form, he commanded attention, a panther among house cats. His deep voice called out corrections, demonstrating techniques with swift, calculated movements. Arya had observed enough to understand the Shadowcrest pack was different. These weren't just fighters. They were a well-oiled machine, each member understanding their role with mathematical precision. The young wolves listened to Kale with a respect that bordered on reverence. The first warning came as a distant howl, sharp and urgent. Beta Ronin's head snapped toward the western tree line. "Incoming!" he shouted. Everything happened simultaneously. Wolves burst from the tree line, a coordinated wave of attackers wearing red claw pack markings. Their assault was brutal and strategic, targeting weak points in the compound's defensive line. Marcus Redclaw's warriors moved with practiced coordination. They weren't just attacking, they were hunting her. Arya felt her heart race. These weren't random fighters. This was a calculated strike designed to penetrate Shadowcrest's legendary defenses and capture her. Kale's transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. Where a muscular human stood moments before, now a massive black wolf towered over the battlefield. Midnight fur rippled with muscle, silver eyes blazing with primal fury. His wolf form was larger than any Arya had ever witnessed, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with a presence that seemed to darken the very air around him. The Shadowcrest pack responded like a single organism. Wolves shifted, weapons were drawn, defensive positions locked into place. No panic, no confusion. Just pure, disciplined action. Kale moved like liquid darkness. Each strike was precise and fatal. Wolves that approached him were thrown aside like rag dolls, crushed beneath massive paws or torn apart by razor-sharp fangs. His movements were a dance of destruction, calculated, merciless, protecting his territory. A red claw wolf broke through the defensive line. Its trajectory was clear, straight toward Arya. Time seemed to slow. The wolf's eyes locked onto her, teeth bared, muscles coiled to strike. Something inside Arya shifted. A warmth began in her core, spreading outward. The air around her seemed to ripple. The attacking wolf suddenly stopped midair, suspended, impossibly. Then it was violently thrown backward, as if struck by an invisible force. It crashed into a nearby training structure, bones clearly breaking on impact. Silence fell. Every head turned toward Arya. Her hands were outstretched. A faint shimmer of energy still danced around her fingertips. She stared at her hands, as shocked as everyone else. The aftermath of the attack transformed everything. Where Arya had once been a captive, she was now viewed differently, as a potential weapon, a mystery to be understood. Kale's decision was immediate and absolute. "You'll train with me," he announced that evening, his tone brooking no argument. The pack's training yard would become her classroom, her body a weapon to be honed. Their first session began at dawn. Crisp morning air nipped at Arya's skin as she faced Kale, dressed in simple training clothes that allowed movement. Luna watched from the sidelines, her arms crossed, a critical eye assessing every moment. "Your power isn't just telekinesis," Kale explained, circling her like a predator. "It's a manifestation of emotional energy. Moonblood lineage isn't just about strength, it's about control." The training was brutal. Kale didn't coddle her. He pushed her to her limits, forcing her to access the power that had erupted during the attack. Targets would float, then slam violently to the ground. Rocks would spin, then explode into dust. Focus, he would command. The power isn't outside you, it's inside. Days blended together. Bruises mapped her body, testament to Kale's unforgiving training style. He'd demonstrate a move, then expect her to counter. Grappling became a daily ritual. His body against hers, muscles tensed, breath hot and close. Luna's perspective began to shift. She'd watch Arya's determination, the way she refused to break despite the intense training. She's got spine, Luna muttered to Ronan one afternoon. Not like other Omegas. Ronan, ever analytical, simply nodded. She's proving to be unexpected. The turning point came during a particularly intense sparring session. Kale had her pinned, their bodies tangled. Sweat glistened on skin. His weight pressed her into the ground. Each breath a heated exchange. For a moment, the world stopped. Their eyes locked. Something electric passed between them, a tension more dangerous than any physical confrontation. His lips were inches from hers. Arya could feel the rapid beat of his heart, feel the moment suspended between them. Almost a kiss. Then Kale pulled away. Something in his expression, a flash of vulnerability quickly masked by alpha control, revealed more than he intended. Again, he said, voice rough, control your power. Luna approached Arya later that day. You handled yourself well during the attack, she said, the first genuine compliment since Arya's arrival. Ronan, watching from nearby, added quietly, You're not what we expected from a Silvermane Omega. The training continued. The tension grew, and something was definitely changing. The infirmary buzzed with quiet tension. Wounded Shadowcrest warriors lay on medical beds, their bodies marked from a brutal border skirmish with the Riverrun pack. Blood-stained bandages and the smell of antiseptic mixed with the metallic scent of wolf healing. Arya had initially volunteered to help out of a sense of obligation, but something unexpected happened. When her fingers brushed against a deep gash on a young warrior's shoulder, something remarkable occurred. The wound began to close faster than normal, silvery threads of energy weaving beneath her skin. What was that? The warrior whispered, staring at his rapidly healing wound. Beta Ronan, who had been watching carefully, stepped closer. Her sharp eyes narrowed with interest. Moon blood healing, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Word spread quickly through the pack. Arya, once viewed as an outsider, became something more. Her gentle hands moved from bed to bed, each touch accelerating healing, reducing pain. Young wolves who had been wary now looked at her with something close to reverence. Luna watched from the doorway, her initial suspicion softening. She's not just a captive, she said to Kale later that evening. She's becoming part of us. Dinner became their unexpected ritual. The pack's dining hall, a massive room with wooden tables and hunting trophies on stone walls, became a place of quiet revelation. Kale would sit at the head of the table, Arya beside him, their conversations a delicate dance of trust and vulnerability. My father was murdered when I was 17, Kale said one evening, his voice low. The pack around them continued eating, but the air felt charged. A rival alpha thought he could take our territory. I tracked him for months. When I finally found him, I didn't just defeat him. I ended him. Arya studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the pain buried deep in his silver eyes. Revenge? She asked. Justice, he corrected. Sometimes they look the same. She understood that more than most. The destruction of her own pack was still a raw wound. My father's last words to me were about destiny, she shared. He said I carried something important, something that would change everything. Their hands would sometimes touch accidentally, a brush of fingers reaching for the salt, hands nearly meeting as they both reached for a serving spoon. Each touch sent a small electric current through the air. The pack noticed. Beta Ronin saw how Kale's body would subtly shift when Arya entered a room, how her presence seemed to calm his typically intense energy. Luna watched with a mix of curiosity and protective instinct. During training sessions, their connection grew more complex. Arya's telekinetic abilities became more refined. Rocks would float, targets would shatter. Her control increased with each passing day. "You're learning to channel emotion into power," Kale would explain. "Most wolves suppress their feelings. You're learning to use them." The Shadowcrest pack began to see her differently. No longer just a captive Omega, but a potential asset. Someone who could heal, who could fight, who was becoming one of them. Whispers began about the prophecy, about her moonblood lineage, about what she might mean for the pack's future. But in these moments, those were just whispers. What mattered was the connection forming. Slow, deliberate, unexpected. The full moon festival transformed Shadowcrest's compound into a realm of magic and celebration. Twinkling lights wound around ancient oak trees, massive bonfires cast golden shadows across the gathering, and the air vibrated with music and wolf energy. Luna had spent hours helping Arya prepare. The dress was midnight blue, shimmering like starlight, with delicate silver embroidery that caught every movement. It was nothing like the plain, functional clothing Arya had worn since arriving at Shadowcrest. "You need to look like you belong," Luna had insisted, braiding Arya's hair with small silver clips that matched the dress's intricate design. Not like a prisoner, but like a potential Luna. When Arya stepped out, the pack's celebrations momentarily hushed. Young wolves stopped dancing. Warriors paused mid-conversation. Even the musicians seemed to catch their breath. Kale stood across the compound, his formal black leather jacket fitted perfectly, showcasing his muscular frame. Their eyes met across the distance, and something electric passed between them. The music was a mix of traditional wolf folk songs and modern beats. Drums thundered with a primal rhythm that seemed to pulse directly into every wolf's bloodstream. Younger pack members danced with wild abandon, shifting between human and wolf forms, their joy infectious. Arya watched, fascinated. This wasn't just a party. This was a celebration of pack unity, of survival, of community. Children danced with elders. Warriors laughed with healers. Every member of Shadowcrest moved as one organism, connected by something deeper than blood. Beta Ronin noticed Arya's wonder. "Full Moon Festival celebrates our survival," he explained, appearing beside her. "We remember those we've lost. We celebrate those still here. We show our strength." Kyle approached slowly, each step deliberate. The crowd seemed to part for him instinctively, creating a pathway. When he reached Arya, he extended one hand. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a question. Their bodies moved together like they'd been dancing for centuries. His hand at her waist felt like fire. Her hand in his felt like home. The music seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their heartbeats. Kale's thumb traced her jawline, a touch so gentle it barely registered. Yet it sent electricity through every nerve. He leaned down, their faces impossibly close. The stars above seemed to hold their breath. Just as their lips were about to meet, the world exploded. The explosions ripped through the Shadowcrest compound, shattering the festival's peaceful atmosphere. Screams erupted as smoke and debris filled the air. Victor Stormwind's alliance had launched a calculated, brutal attack designed to catch the pack at its most vulnerable moment. Kale's transformation was instantaneous. His massive black wolf burst from human form, a whirlwind of fur and muscle that moved with calculated fury. "Defend the pack!" he roared, a command that reverberated through every wolf's instincts. Arya felt something surge within her. Unlike previous encounters, her power now felt like a living thing, controlled, precise, powerful. Invisible barriers shimmered around wounded wolves, protecting them from additional attacks. Where her hands touched injured pack members, wounds began to close with shocking speed. How? Beta Ronin started, watching in disbelief as Arya's telekinetic shields deflected incoming attacks. Her moonblood powers had awakened fully, responding to the pack's desperate need. Each injured wolf she touched healed faster than any traditional medicine could manage. Her energy moved like liquid silver, knitting flesh, stopping bleeding, pushing back against death itself. Kale fought like a demon, his black wolf form moving with impossible speed. Wolves who attacked Shadowcrest territory found themselves torn apart before they could even complete their assault. His rage was a tangible thing, protecting everything and everyone he considered his. When a particularly large wolf broke through their defensive line and charged toward Arya, Kale's howl of protective fury split the air. But Arya was no longer defenseless. She raised her hand, and the attacking wolf was flung backward, not by her hand, but by pure telekinetic force that crushed the wolf against a nearby tree. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was merely minutes. Shadowcrest's defenders, led by Kale's strategic brilliance and Arya's unexpected powers, systematically destroyed the attacking force. As the last enemy wolf fell, an eerie silence descended. Smoke curled around fallen bodies. The compound looked like a war zone, trees splintered, ground scorched, bodies everywhere. Kale approached Arya, still in his massive wolf form. He shifted back to human, breathing heavily. Blood and dirt covered his skin, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made Arya's breath catch. Without speaking, he pulled her close. Their first kiss was nothing like the gentle moment interrupted earlier. This was raw, passionate, acclaiming. Victory and survival melted together in a kiss that spoke of something deeper than mere attraction. As dawn's first light broke, Arya helped treat the wounded, her healing touch now legendary among the Shadowcrest pack. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, closing wounds and bringing wolves back from the brink of death. It was then, between treating a young warrior and checking another's injuries, that she heard the conversation that would change everything. Ronin's voice was low, meant to be private. "The plan is proceeding perfectly," he said to Kale, who stood nearby. Elder Thorn's response came next. "The prophecy requires a willing mate. Everything depends on her choosing to stay." Arya froze. Her hands, which had been healing a wolf's leg wound, suddenly went still. A willing mate. A plan. The prophecy. Everything she thought was growing between her and Kale. Their genuine connection, their emerging feelings, suddenly felt manufactured, orchestrated. Betrayal tasted bitter in her mouth. As dawn's first light crept across the compound, Arya made her choice. She would disappear. Her new powers would ensure her escape. She would mask her scent, hide her trail. The pack, Kale, would never find her. Not unless she wanted to be found. The forest blurred around Arya as she moved swiftly between shadows, her breath coming in ragged gasps. 3 days of constant movement had stripped away her initial defiance, replacing it with raw survival instinct. The neutral territories between pack lands were treacherous, a no-man's land where the weak became prey. Her Omega status was a curse now. Without a pack's protection, her unclaimed scent was like a beacon to every opportunistic rogue wolf in the surrounding territories. Twice already she'd been forced to defend herself, each confrontation leaving her more exhausted than the last. The first attack came just hours after her escape from Shadowcrest. A pair of lean, scarred wolves had caught her scent and circled her like hungry predators. Arya had learned enough from Kale's training to know she couldn't outrun them. Instead, she'd raised her hand, drawing on the telekinetic power that was still so new and unpredictable. The first wolf went flying, slammed against a massive oak with such force that bones cracked audibly. The second hesitated, then lunged. Arya's power erupted again, But this time, the strain was visible. Her nose began to bleed, and she stumbled, nearly losing consciousness from the effort. Now, as she moved through a dense patch of pine forest, Arya understood how much she'd relied on Kale's protection. Her two powers were strong but unrefined. Each use left her weaker, more vulnerable. The precise control Kale had been teaching her seemed miles away now. By midday, the hunger became unbearable. Her wolf metabolism required substantial nutrition, and days of running had depleted her reserves. The neutral territories offered few safe options for someone trying to remain undetected. The small human town looked like her only choice. Keeping her head down, Arya slipped into a convenience store, carefully counting the cash she'd managed to grab before escaping. Her clothes were dirty, her hair tangled. She looked like exactly what she was, a desperate runaway. The store's small television caught her attention. Her hand froze mid-reach for a protein bar as Kale's face filled the screen. He looked different from their last moments together. Gone was the controlled, calculated alpha. This Kale appeared raw, almost vulnerable. A massive reward poster dominated the background, $1 million, for information leading to her return. Arya Silvermane is not a prisoner. Kale's voice was low, intense. She is crucial to our pack's survival and her own safety. Anyone with information should contact Shadowcrest immediately. The newsreader continued, highlighting the unprecedented nature of such a public search. An alpha offering such a massive reward for a single omega was unheard of in werewolf territories. Arya's hand trembled. She dropped the protein bar, her appetite suddenly gone. The television continued. Grainy footage showed her last moments at the Shadowcrest compound, her healing wounded wolves, her telekinetic powers protecting the pack during the attack. The broadcast suggested she was more than just an omega. She was something unprecedented. A young store clerk approached. "You okay, miss? You look like you've seen a ghost." Arya forced a smile, grabbed her supplies, and paid quickly. Outside, the world felt smaller, more dangerous. She knew she couldn't stay here long. Rogues would be watching. Rival packs would be hunting. And Kale, she wasn't sure which would be worse, capture by an enemy or being found by him. The weight of the prophecy she'd overheard pressed down on her. A willing mate. A plan. How much of their growing connection had been real? Her wolf stirred inside her, torn between the survival instinct to run and something deeper, a connection she was trying desperately to deny. The abandoned warehouse loomed like a steel skeleton against the moonless night. Rusted machinery and broken windows created a labyrinth of shadows that seemed to breathe with menace. Arya's body ached, every muscle screaming from days of constant movement, her powers depleted from constant defensive use. She'd been tracking what she thought was a safe path through the neutral territories when the trap sprung. Not a wolf pack, not Shadowcrest, but something far worse. Marcus Redclaw's massive frame blocked the warehouse's primary entrance. His wolves, at least a dozen strong, filtered in behind him like predatory shadows. Their scents were thick with anticipation, a savage hunger that made Arya's omega instinct scream. Well, well, Marcus's voice dripped with cruel satisfaction. The little Silvermane runaway. His approach was calculated, each step deliberate. Unlike Kale's controlled movements, Marcus moved with a primal, threatening energy. The kind of alpha who viewed omegas as nothing more than property to be conquered and broken. Silver chains materialized in his hands, not standard pack restraints, but intricate, wickedly designed links meant to maximize pain. They caught the dim warehouse light, looking almost alive with malevolent intent. "You thought you could run?" Marcus chuckled, a sound devoid of any genuine humor. Little Omega, running from her destiny. The chains struck like serpents. Before Arya could react, they wrapped around her wrists, ankles, constricting with supernatural speed. The silver burned instantly, not just a physical sensation, but a spiritual assault that cut directly into her werewolf core. Arya screamed, not just from pain, but from the sudden, terrifying vulnerability. Her powers, those mysterious moonblood abilities that had been growing stronger, suddenly felt distant, unreachable. Marcus's pack spread out, forming a predatory circle. Young warriors, seasoned hunters, all with the same hungry, possessive look. An Omega without protection. An Omega about to be claimed. "You're worth a fortune," Marcus growled, stepping closer. "Not just for your bloodline, but for what you represent." The silver chains continued burning. Each link seemed designed to break not just her physical resistance, but her spirit. Arya could feel her wolf retreating, overwhelmed by the aggressive dominance surrounding her. Marcus's hand traced her cheek. The touch was calculated. Not gentle, but not immediately violent. A predator studying his prey. "The other alphas want you for some mystical prophecy," he whispered. "I just want to remind you of your true place." Arya's terror began building. Not just fear, but a primal, Omega-driven panic that threatened to consume her entirely. Her powers, those telekinetic abilities she'd been learning to control, began to stir. But the silver. Always the silver. Each time her abilities tried to surge, the chains would burn hotter, brighter, pushing back her resistance with calculated, brutal efficiency. Marcus's pack began to close in. Their intentions were brutally clear. An unclaimed Omega, no protections, no rescue coming. Her powers continued trying to surge, desperate, terrified. But the silver continued its relentless suppression. For the first time since discovering her abilities, Arya felt truly, completely helpless. The warehouse's stillness shattered with a thunderous explosion. Brick and metal fragments erupted inward as a massive black wolf burst through the wall, transforming mid-leap into Kale's powerful human form. His eyes blazed with an uncontrolled fury that made even Marcus's wolves take an instinctive step backward. "Get away from her." Kale's voice was a low, dangerous growl that seemed to vibrate through the entire warehouse. Every muscle in his body coiled with lethal potential. Unlike his usual calculated approach, this was pure, primal protection. Marcus laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed off the metal walls. "You came alone? Defied your own pack council? I would burn every alliance to the ground for her," Kel responded, his gaze never leaving Arya. She hung suspended in the silver chains, her body weak, but her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something deeper. Hope? Fear? The chains continued to burn, preventing her powers from emerging, keeping her trapped and vulnerable. The fight erupted with brutal speed. Marcus's wolves moved as a coordinated unit, but Kale fought like a berserker. Each movement was calculated yet savage, a dance of violence that demonstrated why he was considered the most feared alpha in the territories. Wolves flew across the warehouse, bones crunched, blood splattered against rusted machinery. Kale took multiple hits, allowing wounds to land so he could create openings in their defense. A bite to his shoulder, a slash across his ribs. Each injury seemed to fuel his determination rather than slow him down. "You're pathetic," Marcus taunted, circling Kale, "an alpha who won't simply take what he wants, who pretends to care about an Omega's choice." Kale's response was a snarl that was half human, half wolf, pure defiance. The battle raged, wolves lunged, Kale's fists and claws struck with precision, but numbers began to tell. Marcus's pack was large, and they were coordinating their attacks with brutal efficiency. Slowly, inevitably, Kale was driven back. Wounds multiplied. His breathing became ragged. The pack's coordinated assault meant each wolf could attack and retreat, wearing him down, systematically. Arya watched in horror. The The silver chains continued burning her, preventing her from using her powers. Her moon blood abilities, which had been growing stronger, remained frustratingly out of reach. Finally, a coordinated attack brought Kale to his knees. Wolves pinned his arms, held him down. Marcus stepped forward, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Kale looked directly at Arya, their eyes locked. "I love you," he said simply. "More than any prophecy, more than any pack law." His next words would change everything. The moment Kale whispered those words, "I love you," something profound shifted inside Arya. Her rage, her pain, her months of captivity and struggle all crystallized into a single point of pure, explosive energy. The silver chains binding her began to tremble. Tiny fractures appeared in their metallic links, spreading like spiderwebs across the restraints. Marcus took a step back, his confident sneer faltering for the first time. "What? Tiu," he started to say. Then Arya screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was something primordial, something that seemed to draw power from the very earth itself. Her moonblood lineage, the ancient power her father had spoken of, erupted in a tsunami of telekinetic force. The silver chains shattered like glass. Wolves that had been holding Kyle down were suddenly thrown backward, crashing into walls and machinery with bone-crushing force. Invisible waves of energy pulsed outward, creating a shockwave that made the warehouse's metal walls ring like a struck bell. Marcus staggered backward, genuine fear replacing his earlier arrogance. "This is impossible," he muttered. Arya stood transformed. Her earlier vulnerability was gone, replaced by something ancient and terrible. Her eyes glowed with an inner light, silver and electric blue, matching the crackling energy that now danced around her body like living lightning. Kale, bloodied and wounded, watched her with a mixture of awe and love. Their mate bond, which had been a quiet hum, now blazed like a bonfire, connecting them with an intensity that made the other wolves whimper and retreat. She moved with supernatural grace, her powers no longer defensive, but offensive. Wolves that approached were simply removed. Not killed, but lifted and hurled away as if they were nothing more than leaves in a hurricane. Her control was precise, her fury surgical. Marcus rallied his remaining pack. "Attack!" he screamed, desperation making his voice crack. But Kale was already moving. Despite his wounds, he fought with a synchronized precision with Arya that suggested they had been warriors together for decades, not weeks. Where she created openings with her telekinetic strikes, he struck with brutal efficiency. Wolves flew. Bones broke. The warehouse became a hurricane of supernatural violence. And through it all, Arya and Kale moved as one, not just as individuals, but as true mates. Their bond transformed the battle from a fight for survival to a dance of shared power. When the last wolf fell, silence descended. Marcus lay broken and defeated, watching as Arya and Kyle stood together, their connection visible as a shimmering energy between them. Kale swayed. His numerous wounds, held at bay by adrenaline and mate bond energy, now demanded their toll. As he started to collapse, Arya caught him, her newfound strength supporting his massive frame. "You came for me," she whispered. "Always," Kale responded, his voice weak but filled with absolute certainty. "Seeing you free, seeing you fierce, it was worth everything." His eyes started to close. Blood continued to seep from multiple wounds, but his last words carried a vulnerability that broke through all his previous armor. "Even if you never forgive me." The journey back to Shadowcrest was a blur of desperation and determination. Arya cradled Kale's broken body in the pack's emergency medical transport, her hands glowing with an otherworldly healing, energy that pulsed and flickered like silver moonlight. Each touch attempted to knit his wounds, to pull him back from the razor's edge between life and death. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. The mate bond between them thrummed, a living, breathing connection that refused to let go. Drops of her blood mixed with his, a primal connection that transcended typical werewolf healing. Luna watched from across the vehicle, her warrior's eyes sharp with a mixture of concern and calculation. She had never seen an Omega display such raw power, such absolute determination. When they arrived at Shadowcrest, chaos erupted. The compound was divided. Some wolves rushed to help, others hung back, whispering about betrayal and prophecy. Beta Ronin stood at the entrance, his expression unreadable. Kyle was rushed to the medical wing, his breathing shallow. Arya refused to leave his side, her hand never releasing his, her healing energy creating intricate patterns of silver, light that danced across his wounded skin. Hours passed, wolves gathered, whispers became louder, challenges began to emerge. Victor, the senior pack lieutenant, stepped forward first. "The Alpha is compromised," he declared, "and Omega cannot lead us. The prophecy was a mistake." Another wolf, a scarred warrior named Garrett, added, "We cannot follow an Alpha who chose an outsider over our pack's survival." Arya's head snapped up. The room went silent. Her eyes, now a swirling mix of silver and electric blue, swept across the assembled pack. The temperature seemed to drop. Invisible energy crackled around her. "I am not just an Omega," she said, her voice carrying a power that silenced every murmur. "I am Kale's chosen mate, by my own choice, not by prophecy, not by manipulation, by love." Her hand never left Kale's. The healing energy continued to pulse, a testament to their connection. Luna stepped forward, standing beside Arya. "She speaks truth," she announced. "My brother chose her, and our pack respects the Alpha's choice." The challenge hung in the air. Wolves looked at each other, uncertainty rippling through the ranks. An Omega challenging pack hierarchy was unprecedented. An Omega displaying such raw power was unheard of. Arya stood, her body now fully illuminated by the silver healing energy. She was no longer just Kale's mate, she was becoming something more. Something the pack had never seen before. "I do not seek to replace your Alpha," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I seek to stand beside him, to protect this pack, to honor the bond we share." The medical monitors beeped. Kale's fingers twitched. His connection to Arya, to the pack, to life itself, pulled him back from the darkness. The pack's traditional Luna trials were not mere tests of strength, but challenges designed to evaluate leadership, wisdom, and commitment. With Kale still recovering in the medical wing, Arya stood before the pack elders, her back straight, chin lifted with quiet determination. Elder Thorn, a weathered wolf with silver streaks in his dark fur, announced the first trial. "Conflict resolution," he declared. "Settle a dispute between two pack members without using your enhanced powers or alpha authority." The challenge involved two wolf families, the Brennans and the Caldwells, locked in a generations-old territorial disagreement about hunting grounds. Typically, such conflicts would be resolved through dominance or force. Arya listened carefully, her keen Omega senses picking up the emotional undercurrents beneath their arguments. Instead of demanding compliance, she proposed a compromise. She mapped out shared hunting territories, created rotating schedules that respected each family's traditional hunting areas, and suggested a joint training program for younger pack members to build community. Her solution wasn't about winning, but finding mutual understanding. The pack elders exchanged surprised glances. This was not a typical Omega response. The second trial tested her strategic thinking. Beta Ronin presented a complex border defense scenario, challenging her to protect Shadowcrest's territories against multiple simulated attack vectors. Arya didn't rely on brute strength, but used intricate positioning, understanding each wolf's strengths, and creating defensive layers that maximized protection while minimizing direct confrontation. Her approach revealed a deep understanding of pack dynamics, not just as a warrior, but as a strategic thinker who saw beyond immediate conflict. The final trial would be far more dangerous. As if summoned by the pack's testing, a rogue wolf pack launched an unexpected attack during a children's training session. The timing was deliberate, targeting the most vulnerable members of Shadowcrest. Arya's response was instantaneous. While experienced warriors rushed to the front lines, she prioritized the children's safety. Her healing powers created protective barriers, her telekinetic abilities deflecting incoming attacks. She didn't just defend, she strategically positioned the younger wolves, creating safe zones and guiding them to secure locations. When a particularly aggressive rogue broke through the initial defenses and charged toward a group of young wolves, Arya intercepted. Her powers flared, not with destructive energy, but with precise, controlled force that neutralized the threat without unnecessary violence. Luna watched from the battle's edge, a proud smile crossing her face. This was no ordinary Omega. This was a true protector. The attack lasted less than 20 minutes. When silence returned, Arya had saved every single child. Not a single Shadowcrest young wolf was lost. That evening, as the pack celebrated their successful defense, Kale, still pale but growing stronger, asked Arya to sit with him. The medical wing was quiet, moonlight streaming through narrow windows. "You want to know the full truth about the prophecy," he said, his voice rough but steady. Arya waited, her hand instinctively finding his. "The prophecy was never about force," Kyle explained. "It was about choice, about an Omega who would choose to protect, to lead, not because of destiny, but because of love. When I bought you from the auction, it wasn't to control you. It was to protect you from alphas who would try to break your spirit, to use you as a weapon." His silver eyes locked with hers, vulnerable and honest. "I gave you a choice," he continued. "At every moment. The compound, the training, the festivals. I never forced your hand. I wanted you to see the pack, to understand, to choose." The summons arrived precisely at dawn, an ornate scroll sealed with the Alpha Court's crimson wax, carried by a neutral messenger wolf whose scent spoke of absolute diplomatic immunity. Kale's fingers broke the seal, his eyes narrowing as he read the formal invitation that was more of a command. "They want us both," he said quietly, looking across their shared bedroom at Arya. "The court demands our appearance in 3 days." Arya's spine straightened. The Alpha Court was legendary, a governing body of the most powerful alphas who maintained order between packs, settled disputes, and enforced werewolf law. Their judgments were final and often brutal. "Marcus's allies are pushing for my redistribution," she said, not asked. Her voice carried a steel that surprised even herself. Months ago, she would have cowered at such a prospect. Now she stood ready to fight. Kale's response was a low growl. "They will not touch you." The next 2 days became a preparation of both strategy and intimacy. Luna and Beta Ronin helped Arya select a formal presentation outfit that signaled strength, not submission. A midnight blue dress with silver embroidery that highlighted her Silvermane lineage, cut in a style that allowed movement, with strategic openings that revealed the strength beneath elegance. Kale's preparation was more martial. He consulted with pack elders, reviewed potential legal challenges, and prepared documentation proving Arya's legitimate claiming, not as property, but as a chosen mate. Every document, every argument was carefully constructed to prevent any legal maneuvering by their enemies. The night before their court appearance was charged with emotional and sexual tension. They both knew the risks. Marcus's remaining allies would be gunning for any weakness, any opportunity to challenge Kale's claim or separate Arya from her newfound pack. Their bedroom became a sanctuary of quiet intensity. Kale's hands were gentle as he helped Arya undress, each movement deliberate. His silver eyes tracked every motion, every subtle muscle movement. When his fingers brushed her skin, electricity sparked between them. "They will try to break us," Arya whispered, her hands finding Kale's muscular shoulders. "They will fail," he responded, voice a low rumble. Their joining was neither gentle nor completely savage, but a perfect balance of passion and partnership. Hands exploring, claiming, mouths marking territory. Their mate bond blazed between them, a physical manifestation of their connection that went beyond mere physical attraction. Arya's nails raked down Kale's back as he entered her, both of them gasping, her legs wrapped around his waist, pulling him deeper. Each movement was a statement. We are equals. We are together. We will not be broken. When they finally collapsed, sweat slicked and breathing hard, matching marks of possession gleamed on their necks. Mating marks that declared to any who looked. They were bound, not by force, but by choice. Neither slept much that night. They held each other, sometimes talking quietly about strategy, sometimes just breathing in each other's scent, preparing, waiting. The Alpha Court awaited. The Alpha Court chamber was a massive circular room carved from obsidian and white marble, designed to intimidate. Rows of elevated seats surrounded a central platform where challengers and claimants would present their cases. Ancient werewolf crests adorned the walls, silent witnesses to centuries of pack politics. Arya stood beside Kale, her midnight blue dress a stark contrast against the stone floor. Dozens of alphas watched her, some with curiosity, others with open hostility. Marcus's remaining allies glared from the left side of the chamber, their intentions as sharp as their barely concealed anger. When the chief adjudicator, an ancient wolf with silver hair and piercing gray eyes, called for her formal presentation, Arya did something no Omega had ever done before. She reached up and unbuckled Kyle's claiming collar from her neck. The room went dead silent. "I stand before you not as a possession," she declared, her voice clear and strong, "but as Arya of the Silvermane bloodline, chosen Luna of Shadowcrest." The collar dropped to the floor with a metallic ring that seemed to echo through centuries of werewolf tradition. Kale remained perfectly still, watching her. He understood what she was doing. She wasn't just defending herself. She was challenging an entire system of pack hierarchy. "My powers are not a weapon to be controlled," Arya continued, "but a gift that could transform how our packs understand each other. The Moonblood lineage isn't about conquest. It's about healing, about connection." Whispers erupted around the chamber. Some alphas looked confused. Others looked intrigued. A few looked furious. Marcus's eldest brother, a brutish wolf named Victor Redclaw, stood abruptly. "This is an insult to tradition," he snarled. "An unmated Omega does not speak in the Alpha Court. She does not remove a claiming mark. She does not challenge protocol." Arya met his gaze without flinching. "Then challenge me," she said simply. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Victor's smile was more a baring of teeth. Dominance challenge, right now. Tradition permitted this. Any challenged claim could be settled through ritual combat, a practice as old as werewolf society itself. But typically, an Omega would never initiate such a challenge. Kale's hand twitched toward her, a protective gesture quickly controlled. His eyes burned silver, communicating silently. "I trust you." Arya stepped forward onto the central platform. No weapons, no additional protection, just her. Victor transformed midway through his approach, a massive gray wolf with scarred ears and brutal musculature. He clearly expected an easy victory, a quick demonstration of traditional pack dominance. What happened next would be remembered in werewolf history. Arya's transformation was different. Where other wolves simply changed shape, her body seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her wolf form was smaller than Victor's, but moved with a precision and power that defied expectations. The fight was brutally quick. Victor lunged, expecting to overwhelm her with pure strength. Instead, Arya's telekinetic powers created an invisible barrier that redirected his momentum. He crashed into the marble floor, stunning himself. Before he could recover, she was on him, not with teeth and claws, but with a controlled display of power that pinned him without causing permanent damage. When Victor tried to rise, she pressed one paw against his throat, not crushing, not killing, simply demonstrating absolute control. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, she stepped back and allowed him to retreat, offering mercy instead of destruction. The Alpha Court's decision echoed through the werewolf territories like a thunderclap. What had begun as Arya's defiant stand transformed into a landmark ruling that would reshape pack dynamics forever. The chief adjudicator's formal declaration recognized her not just as Kale's mate, but as a sovereign individual with unprecedented rights. The Moonblood Omega shall be acknowledged as a full participant in pack governance, the ancient wolf proclaimed, his voice carrying the weight of centuries-old tradition being rewritten. Her claiming is by mutual choice, her powers a gift to be respected, not controlled. Kale stood beside her, his massive frame radiating quiet pride. The alphas who had once looked at Arya as a commodity now watched with a mixture of respect and barely concealed uncertainty. She had challenged everything they knew about pack hierarchy and won. As they left the Alpha Court, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble steps. Arya could feel the weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for every Omega who would come after her. "Are you okay?" Kale asked softly, his hand brushing her lower back, a touch of protection that now felt like partnership rather than possession. Arya smiled, a hint of her earlier fierceness still dancing in her eyes. "I'm more than okay. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Their journey back to Shadowcrest was interrupted by Luna, who met them halfway, her wolf form racing alongside their vehicle. Something was wrong. Her body language screamed urgency. When they arrived at the compound, Beta Ronin was waiting with a file of intelligence that made Kale's expression darken. Victor Stormwind had vanished, leaving behind cryptic evidence of a connection to human hunters who seemed to know far too much about werewolf society. But tonight was not a night for worry. Tonight was a celebration. The Shadowcrest pack gathered in the main hall, their excitement palpable. Young wolves bounced with energy, elder wolves watched with knowing smiles. As Arya and Kyle entered, a chorus of howls erupted, a traditional welcome for a newly recognized Luna. Luna approached, presenting Arya with a beautifully crafted collar. Unlike the previous restrictive mark, this was a delicate piece of silver and moonstone, designed with intricate werewolf symbols representing partnership and mutual respect. Kale's voice was low, meant only for Arya's ears. "This represents our bond, not ownership, not prophecy, choice." The collar was an elegant compromise between tradition and revolution. Thin silver bands intertwined with moonstones, each stone etched with ancient pack markings. When Kale fastened it around her neck, it felt like a promise, not a claim. The pack feast that followed was unlike any Arya had experienced. Music played, wolves danced, and for the first time she felt truly part of something larger than herself. Young Omegas looked at her with hope, seeing a future where they could be more than just potential mates to be traded. Kyle watched her, his silver eyes soft with an emotion that went beyond alpha protectiveness. Love, pure and simple. As the night wore on, celebrations continued, but beneath the joy, a current of change ran through Shadowcrest. Something fundamental had shifted in werewolf society, and Arya was at the center of that transformation. The crisp autumn wind whispered through the Shadowcrest compound, carrying the scent of change and possibility. 6 months had transformed more than just Arya. They had reshaped an entire werewolf society. Where once Shadowcrest had been a traditional pack focused solely on strength and territory, it was now a beacon of progressive wolf culture. Omega shelters lined the compound's eastern wing, each room a sanctuary for those who had once been treated as property. Arya's personal mission had become a pack-wide revolution. Luna watched from the training grounds as a group of young Omegas practiced defensive techniques. Her fierce smile matched the pride in her eyes. These weren't just training sessions, they were declarations of freedom. Inside the main house, Arya stood before a full-length mirror, her hand resting on her growing belly. The pregnancy had only amplified her moonblood powers. Where once her abilities had been unpredictable and frightening, now they hummed with controlled, beautiful potential. Her dress for the full moon festival was deep midnight blue, adorned with silver threads that caught the light like starbursts. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement. Omega. Powerful. Chosen. Kale entered the room, his reflection appearing behind hers in the mirror. Even after 6 months of marriage, the mate bond between them remained electric. He wore traditional alpha formal wear, deep black with silver wolf clan embroidery, but there was nothing traditional about the way he looked at her. Beautiful, he murmured, his hands coming to rest gently on her belly where their twins grew. Modern ultrasound technology mixed with ancient werewolf healing had confirmed 2 strong pups, a male and a female, both showing early signs of extraordinary moonblood potential. The full moon festival had always been a night of celebration in werewolf culture, but this year, under Arya's influence, it represented something more: unity, progress, choice. Pack members from all territories would attend. Omegas who had been rescued, alphas who had embraced change, young wolves who saw a different future. Arya had become more than just Shadowcrest's Luna. She was a symbol of transformation. Beta Ronin entered, carrying 2 significant documents: their mating certificate, signed not just by pack elders, but by representatives from multiple wolf territories, and the twins' first ultrasound. Tradition met innovation in those simple papers. As evening fell and the first moonlight began to shimmer, the pack gathered. Hundreds of wolves, in both human and wolf forms, filled the central courtyard. Children played, elders watched, and at the center stood Kale and Arya. The festival would culminate in their traditional dance, the same spot where 6 months earlier they had first truly connected. Where explosions and battle had once interrupted their moment, now only hope and love remained. Kale extended his hand. Arya took it, their connection sending ripples of energy through the assembled pack. As they began to move, the music, a blend of traditional wolf howls and modern instrumental sounds, seemed to breathe with them. Their dance was a story of survival, of choice, of love that defied every expectation. As they moved beneath the full moon, stars glittering overhead, Kale leaned close. The pack held its collective breath, watching their leaders, their Luna and Alpha. He would place their twins' ultrasound in the pack archives, next to their mating certificate. He would whisper something meant only for her. Their greatest victory wasn't fulfilling any prophecy, but choosing each other every single day. And then, before their entire pack, under the same stars where they first danced, they would share a kiss that spoke of freedom, of passion, of a love truly their own.